Okay, so in the previous video we made a very basic interaction for our player, but now I want to implement a kind of interaction which is called the info interaction, and this is will be when the player just clicks on an object which is not actually interactable, like it's not doing any action, but it will show some information about this object. So okay, so first thing I want to do is create an interaction animation for my player. I'm going to call it interact symbol, and this will be the animation for simple interactions like clicking on a button or picking up some stuff and things like that. So I already imported my animations here, and you will see in my folder interact, animation interact, and I have the symbol interaction. Right now it's only one frame, but it will work. So this is the action that my player will do when he interacts. And I want him to do it when he interacts with this object that we have in the previous video. So to do that, I need some things, and this will be, I'm going to create a new variable here, which will be called interaction animation. And it's going to be an export variable because every single interaction may have a different animation for my player. So this will be a string, and it's going to define which animation the player will play when he's interacting. So if I go to the interaction object here, which I will call it, for example, random interaction, and I go here and type interact symbol, then I have my animation for the player. But my player is not going to play this animation just yet. We need to pass it to my player's motion script. So I'm going to create a new variable which is going to be interaction animation, and this is the animation for that the player is going to use in the change state method. So when he's going to interact here, he's going to play the animation that we want him to play. And in order to do that, we just have to take it in the control and say that the players how did I call it? It was interaction animation. Is equal to this thing here. It's equal to my interactions object interaction animation. So what that does is that I take the animation that I want to play from every interaction and pass it to the player's script in order to execute it at the moment that the player is interacting. So instead of saying self-play interact, I'm going to say self-play interaction animation. Of course, you always want the default animation to be the idle here. Every time you create a new animation, the default animation changes to the newest animation that you create. So you just need to change it to the animation that you want the player to begin with. So now if I hit play, you see that my player will play the interact animation here. So that's fine for a very simple interaction that my player just do an animation and the interaction object responds to that. But what if things get more complicated? What if I want, when my player goes to the interaction, I want to pop up a UI element which will display some text and give me some information about the object. So to do that, I'm going to create a very general script that will cover all these cases that I just want to display some information. And I will show you how to do that, but first I'm going to create this UI element in my scene. And to do that, I need some things. The first one is to create a node which will be the canvas layer. And this thing will and this will be the parent node of all my UI elements that I'm going to display in my screen. So I'm just going to call it UI. And inside that, I'm going to create a new node, which will be a control node. And this will be my card info. I will show you in a few minutes why I call it that. But I also need it to be a different scene of its own, so it's like kind of a prefab. So I'm going to save it as a new scene, and I already created a new folder here which is called UI and have some folders which is the info card. So of course the tscn file already exists in my folder because I experimented with this before I record this video. So I'm just going to overwrite it and save it. So we have this object here that we can edit it separately in a different scene, and I'm just going to go here and drop in some things here. So one thing is the animated sprite. So how this UI element will be represented, and this will be animated sprite because I want for this panel, you can call it, to have an animation when it opens. So I will show you exactly what this is and just create a new animate sprite and a new animation from the sprite and call this animation flip. And if I go here to my UI and info card, I have all this animation here, which is in 24 FPS. And if I play it, you will see that what this does. And what this does is just it shows a card that rotates, and it's like every object in the scene, it's represented in a different card, and that's the logic behind it. And when this flips, it shows some text here, which will be the information about the specific object. You will understand better how what the logic behind this is when we implement it in the scene, but for now just bear with me in the process. So minimize it. You will have to play a little bit with the size. So for now I will have it like this, and here we also need to add some text, and go ahead and add a rich text label, adjust it so it fits to the card here. I'm not an expert in this, but it's definitely better to have open possibilities when you use the BB code than the regular text. So in order to see how my text will look like, I'm going to write a random text here and adjust it so it illustrates the final version of my text that I want to show in my screen. So I'm going to say, hello there, I'm going to create a very awesome card display for my taxis, so you can have all the information you need. Okay, so I've already experimented a little bit with my settings. So first thing I want to do, of course, is to create a new font. Of course, you don't want a very basic font for a game. And that's why I'm going to go to custom fonts and create a new normal font and go to empty and load. Now I've already imported some fonts in my project, but of course you can, I'm sorry, new dynamic font and go here font and now load the font. You can have your own font, whatever font works for you. You can download free fonts from just a Google search. So I will provide the font that I'm using in the link in the description, but this is up to you. So this is the font that I'm using. It's called whatever, I don't remember. Permanent marker, regular. And of course, the size that I wanted to use for my font, I think was about 18. Okay. And the color that I want to use is something between here, but also a little bit darker. So it's like a very dark saturated red. Is the color that works for me. But of course you can use your own colors. So now if you click to the text here, it will show a scrolling bar, and that's because my text does not fit to the boundaries that I have created. So it creates a scrolling bar, and the player will be able to scroll down if he wants to reveal all the text. But I prefer not to have a scrolling bar in the end. I will adjust my texts to be in order to fit my card. Every text to fit my card. I don't want to have larger text. But of course, this is more of a UI design, and it's up to every designer to adjust these settings. But I definitely need my card to be larger, and I have experimented with the size before, and this is about the size that I want to. You can see the dimensions here, and you want preferably to adjust it so that the upper left corner fits the upper left corner of the word. And this blue boundaries here is the size of your canvas. So this is uh, the relative size that your card will have to the screen of the player. So this is what, if I bring it in the center, you will see that it covers a lot of the screen space. And now that I have resized my card, I want to rearrange the text. So it's something like that. So save it, and let's see how this card affects my screen here. So this is not here the ultimate size of the card that will be displayed in my screen in relevance to this background images here. If I click play, you see that my card it's much bigger. It's much bigger than what is displayed. And of course there are some issues with the resize windows, and I will show you why this happens. So the logic here is that these blue boundaries, as I told you before, is the actual canvas size, is the screen size of my UI elements. So the size of this card here is relevant to these dimensions rather than these. So I will show you later how we will work around on that. But also we need to adjust the pivot points so my card will not go in different directions when I resize the window. And to do that, I need to modify these pivot points here. If I go to my card in for the control node, I want to bring these anchor points rather to match the center of the canvas. So if I do that, don't worry about bringing them to the center. It will just snap if you bring them approximately there. So yeah. So when you see these two lines show up, the vertical and the horizontal one, it means that it is in the center. Now if I hit play, you will see that if I resize the window, the card remains to where it was before. Okay, so let's implement this UI element into code. I'm going to go to my scripts, and I'm going to create, no, not yet. I'm going to create here a new script, and I'm going to call it interaction info, because now I need a more specific function, a more specific method of interaction. So instead of having this interaction template, which is very general, I'm going to have a new one, which will be for the info interactions. And I'm just going to take these and copy paste it, but I'm also going to add some new elements. The most important thing that I want to add is the text. And this will be the text that I'm going to display. I'm going to display in my card. So I have a default text here, which I copy pasted, and I also want to say what kind of interaction this is. So my control node will know to do some specific actions when this interaction it's going to be the info interaction. And one more thing that I'm going to need is a variable called write, and will be a boolean. And I will show you later the usage of this variable here. Okay, so let's try to interact with this card here. Let's create a new folder in my scripts, which will be the folder for the UIs. And in this folder, I'm going to create a new script, which will be the info card script. And lots of things will go on here, but first of all, let's have a function called toggle. And it takes a boolean called show. So what this does is that when I want to show, I want to show or hide this card in my scene. So I don't want it to exist every time in my screen. I want it only to show up when the player interact with the corresponding object and then hide again. So I just gonna have this toggle function here, which will tell me if I want to show it or hide it. So if I want to show it, then I'm going to make this object visible. And if I want to hide it, then I'm going to make it not visible. But for now, this will not have any specific effect because I don't have any other implementations. To see if it works, I'm just going to print card interacted here. Now, how to interact with this card? Okay, so to interact with this card, I need to go here and say that I need to know if it's an interaction, it's an info interaction. It's not just a simple interaction, but it is an interaction when I want to show the card. So I'm going to go here, create a new variable and call it interaction type in my control. And this interaction type will be the interaction object's interaction type. So look, I'm taking this thing here because I want to know if it's an if this interaction it's an info interaction. Okay. So how do I know that? Every time I interact with an object, I am here in my interaction event and I get all this information from the object that I'm interacting. And it's going to my control. So now my control knows what kind of interaction it is. And I've said that if it's an info interaction, then do some specific stuff. So one thing I want to do in order to interact is that I want to show the card to the player when he reaches the interaction. So remember, I have this function here. It's the interact function, which is called in every interaction, every object that I interact with my player calls the interact function and do some stuff. So what I want to do here is tell the card to show up and do its work. So to do that, I don't have the instance of the card here, but I'm going to pass it from the control. Look, I'm going to create a new variable called info card, okay? And I'm going to go to my control and find it first. So my control will know info card. It's going to be a control node and it's equal to my UI. Look, notice the hierarchy here. I am here in the control and I want to find a children. So I can only find a children which is exactly next in the hierarchy than my control node. So I'm going to find the UI, but then I want to find the card. So I'm going to find the UI, and after I find the UI, I'm going to get node, and this is the card info. The card info is inside the UI, so that is how I find it. So now I know the instance of this card here. It exists in my control. But I want to pass it to the interactions to the interactions object instance. So here I know which instance is, so I'm taking this here. I know which interaction instance I'm currently into. And I'm going to say that if you're an info interaction, then okay, I'm going to give you the info card so you can interact with it. So because my control is the parent node and gets the info card, remember my interaction info cannot find the info card. So I'm getting from the control and I'm passing it to the interaction info. So now here I know that I have the info card, and when I interact, because remember, in my player motion, I interact when I reach the interaction, and that happens in my move along path. Look, when I stop, when I find my destination, I interact. So when my player reaches the point of interaction, he interacts, and then he calls this function here, which do this job. And I'm saying, okay, interactable object interact. So I'm going here and call this function. And I say info card, what was it? Toggle, right? Toggle to true. And fix some typos here. This is interaction type. Make sure you match this here. And now hit play. And I get an error. Yeah, because this is something that I don't need. I don't want to do in my interaction info, so I'm going to delete this. This is for playing the animation, which I had for the other object, so I don't need to do this here. And another error is, yeah, of course we haven't passed the script here. I'm sorry, I just wanted to call this info card and not card info. So I'm going to fix this in my control too. And it currently doesn't have the script to it, so just pass it here, info card, and play once again and interact, and you can see here that I'm getting the message card interacted. Cool, so I interacted with the card, but now I want to do a lot of stuff with this card. Okay, first of all, I told you about the other animations that I have, and which are two rather. So I have this animation interact info down, and one more which is called interact info up. And what these are is, if I go here to my animations, I have one that the player kind of inspects something that it's lower than him or in the same height, and I have another one that the character inspects something that it's higher than him. So if he's going to inspect this frame here, he will look up. But if you want to inspect this here, he will look down. So a little bit of the detail, but it's a nice touch. And in the boxes here, I want my player to look down. So instead of interact, so this was interact symbol and not interaction symbol. That's why my player kept running in the display earlier instead of doing the animation. And this is called interact info down. Okay, so now I want to do some stuff with my card here. So I'm going to go to the card script and start doing some things. So I'm going to create a new function which will be called clear. And here I'm just going to clear everything in my card. So the first thing that I want to do is clear the text. So let's get the text. Here in my info card I have a node that's called its text label. And yeah, reads text label. Okay, so I'm going to clear the text here. I'm taking the BB code of my text and set it to the empty text. And I want to hide it. So when I start the game, I don't want to show my text. So unready and clear. And of course, I don't want to show the card itself. So I'm going to say self-visible equals false. You might say that you don't need to do that because you do this, but I'll show you later why I need to also hide my text. Because I want to play the animation first and then show the text. Because otherwise it would look weird. Okay, some other things I want to do, of course, is to play the animation. And for that, I'm going to take the animation node. Yeah, I'm just going to copy paste the code there. And I'm taking the animation sprite that I have, and of course in my toggle, when I start showing this thing here, I'm taking animation sprite and play the flip animation. And of course I also want to set the animation frame to 0 because this sprite here doesn't have any other animation, and when you try to play it again, it will start from the end. Because if you play it once, it will stop in the end, and then because this animation doesn't loop, I haven't made it to not loop yet, but uncheck the loop here. Because this animation doesn't loop, you want to reset it because it's not reset on its own. So if you don't do this, the animation will play from the end. The second time it will play, so it will not play at all. Okay, so far so good. So now let's do some additional stuff. Look here, if I go to my rich text label and see this parameter here which is called %visible, either set it to 0 the text is not shown. But if I slowly take it up to 1, it starts filling in. And you know this effect that games have, that the text is not immediately shown, the whole text, but it's slowly, it's like typing that moment. So this is the effect that we want. We'll take it from 0 to 1 in a very smooth way, and this is why we have the tween node. If you see here, the description says smoothly animates a node's property over time. So with this node here, I can easily animate this parameter. And how to do that is with the following way. I want to set a signal from my animated sprite to tell the parent node when the animation finished. So when my player interacts, my card will play the animation. I set this to 0 and play it. You see that this will play. And when it stops playing, when it's finished, I want then to show my text. So I'm going to send the signal here and the animation finished signal and take it there. Of course, I haven't passed the script in the prefab scene, so I'll pass it in the main scene. So just take it from here and put it here and send the signal there, and you see that I now have this function. So in this function here, I know when my animation is finished, and of course first what I need to do is just show the text, because until now it's not visible. So that's why I need to hide it first, because right now my card is visible, but I don't want my text to be visible just yet. So I'm going to show my text and then set the percent visible to 0. So I'm starting with 0 visibility of my text, so I'm starting here. And now I need to animate it, and how to do this is I'm going to call the tween here, and there is this function called interpolate property, and it takes the node of this property, the name of the property, which is percent visible, the edges of the interpolation, so I'm taking from 0 to 1, and then it's the duration, so let's say 1 second. So I'm taking this percent visible from 0 to 1 in 1 second, and I'm going to do this with, how was it called? Tween, something like translinear, I think. Wait. Yeah, tween translinear. So I'm making a linear interpolation from 0 to 1 with is in and out. Tween is in and out. And then I'm saying the tween to play. Or start rather. And of course, I don't have a text yet for my card, because the text is here, but my card hasn't received it yet. So in order to receive it, I'm going to go to the control and go here to my info card, because I have the info card, and take the text of the info card and set it to interaction objects get child index text. So this is the text from my interaction info. But that's a major blunder there, because I don't want to modify the actual node of the text, but the BB code text of it. and make sure you correct that. And I tested, and I'm not sure why it happens, but it seems that the text uh, it's visible when the toggle starts, but that's weird. So in order to avoid that, just make it invisible again here. And let's try it. I will hit play. And now if I go here, you will see that my animation plays properly and then the text is shown. Okay, we're almost there. Yeah, let's call it pile of stuff, something like that. We're almost there. It's just a few things left to do. One is, okay, I'm going to duplicate this here and call this card position. And this is the position that I want my card to show. So, again, this is a rather design choice there. I don't want my card to be shown fixed every time, but I want my card to move in the screen according to the object position. So, the position that I'm going to put it the position that I'm going to put here is where my card will be, and this point here is the upper left corner of my card, because if you see here, because the origin is there and my card is put here, so this is this point here shows where the upper left corner of my card will be rather than the center of my card. So I want, for example, for this here, I want my card to be like there. So it covers this place here. And to do that, I need to convert the global space of this point to the canvas space of my card. And look how I'm going to do that. In my interaction info here, I'm going to get that card position, and I'm just going to get, or rather, in card position, and I'm just going to get the card here, actually the position of my card. So it's named card position 2D. Okay, so now that I have that, I'm just going to set it here. In my control, I'm going to move the info card to where the point that I want. So to do that, I'm going to say info card rect position. Because this is the parameter that this is the parameter that defines, see, the parameter that defines the position of my card. So I'm going to take to modify that here and say that it's equal to like this, and it was called info card position. And now to do the conversion, I'm going to say get global transform with canvas. And origin, so I'm taking the center of this position. So this here just tells me that I want to convert the global position of my point, the card position here, that it's here, and convert it to the canvas coordinates of my card. Okay, make sure you add the parentheses here, and I want to modify a little bit my position. And you see now that if I hit play, going here, and my card is where I want it to be. Cool. Okay, the last thing we need to do is hide the card when we want to hide it. So when we finish with the interaction, we want to hide the card. First things first, just go here to my player motion, and look what I'm going to say here. Here in my, if I find it first, okay, here in my interaction state, my interaction function state, I want to say that if the interaction animation of my player is equal to interact look down, or is up. So I know that with this I know if my player is going to have an info interaction, then I'm going to return, because it is not going to be uh, a time limited interaction. So when my player interacts with this, he is going to stay there until he decides to close the card, the info card. So because I don't have any state to know which animation, which type of animation, which type of interaction I have for my player, I'm just going to use the animation information. So now I can't leave the interaction unless I click a button here in my card, which I will show you now. I will put it now. I'm going to add a button here, and I have it here in my UI buttons, and there, and expand icon and flat. Modify it, modify the size, bring it here. Then this will be the button that I can click as a player in order to leave this interaction. So I'm saying, okay, I read the text, I now want to leave and continue my adventure. So we have this button here. It's not a big deal to work with this button. We just need to know when it's pressed. So I'm going to send a signal, and it's the signal is the pressed signal. Okay, so when the player presses the button, I'm going to emit another signal, which I'm going to create now. It's a custom signal, and it's called close dialog. So when the button is pressed, I want to emit this signal. And the listener of the signal will be the player. So with when the player listens the signal, he will know to exit the animation, and of course, I'm going to clear my card. So I'm done with this interaction. Which means I'm going to toggle false there. Because when I toggle to true, then it means I saw my card, and when I toggle to false, it means I hide my card. So that's why I have the clear function here. It means that I reset everything. And now the player needs to listen the signal. So you see now that I've created the signal. You see that I have it here. I'm sorry.
close dialog. Yep. You see that I have it here. It's now here, and I'm just going to connect it to the player. And the player now has this function, and what this function does is actually I prefer connected to the control. Yeah, I will connect it to the control. It's almost the same thing, but I don't want to mess up too much with the player's motion script, so I'm going to put it here and just say player change state to idle. So that's how I'm exiting this interaction here, because if it's a simple interaction for the player, it's just a timer. After 1 second I can move, but now I can't move until I exit the animation, until I exit the interaction, and the only way to do it is just press the button. And for the button in my info card, I don't want to show it immediately, so I'm going to hide the button here. And make it visible. Make it visible when the tween ends. So when the tween is completed, so that's why I'm going to set another signal. When my text is done writing, is when I see all of my text, then I'm going to make the button visible. Equals true. And of course, again, the button is shown before the signal. I do clear it, but it seems like that the button is shown wherever I toggle. The moment I toggle for some reason, I don't know why. So I just put the button visible false here. Just try it in your own code. I don't know if this will work. If this will work without this, because I'm cleared before. But for some weird reason, it doesn't. Anyway, and also in my player motion here, this is called interact info down and interact info up. So finally, if I hit play, I'm going here, I'm interacting, and blah 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 blah. The text is shown. I can click here, and I'm out of the interaction. So, okay, we're actually done with this, but okay, so we're actually done with this. So after all of that, to show you how easy it is to create another kind of this interaction, just duplicate this, call it whole frame interaction, and I'm going to use this for this frame here. I need to modify the collider, create a new rectangle shape, and put it right around here. Now the position for my player will be down there, and the position for my card will be somewhere here. And now, to show you why this right boolean exists. So I'm going to fast forward this one. When I interact, I want the player to face a specific direction. Sometimes, because the player has the direction that he has before when he was moving, I may want him to have another direction. So I'm going to go to create a new variable, and it's going to be a direction. So it's going to be left or right. And I have the boolean variable here, which is left or right for every interaction, and I'm going to my control, and if I copy paste this here, it says that the direction of the player is equal to the interaction's direction. So now I just need to change the direction of my player when he's interacting, and for that I'm going to create a new function, a very simple function actually, which is called face direction. And it just takes a boolean which is called right, and says that if you want to face right, then don't flip the sprite, but if you want to face left and flip the sprite. And very simply, I'm going to say here in my interact, I don't need this debug anymore. I'm just going to say face the direction that I want you to face. This is called interaction direction. So to show you what this does, now if I go to my wall frame interaction and check the right and hit play and go here, you will see that my player changes direction. For example, I'm coming from here, but because I want to end up here, I want to face that direction. If I hadn't implemented all this code before, my character will face the left direction. So yeah, this is it for my interaction, my info interaction. Now, in order for you not to have any other bug, now because I implemented some code in my control here, now also my general interaction needs to have an interact type. You can have it to be simple. It doesn't matter what it will be because nothing happens with it. And also it has a direction. Otherwise, if you don't have this here and you go to interact, you will have an error. Okay, so this was a long one, but fortunately we did some very interesting stuff. We have now some UI, and this game starts to look more like a game. In the next videos, we will do other interactions with more animations and maybe some characters, and ultimately we will have the interactions where we will have dialogues with other NPCs.